welcome back everybody to Behind the Songs, the Grammy Museum Experience Prudential Center's online conversation and performance series with artists, songwriters, and producers discussing the stories behind some of our favorite songs. I'm your host, Mark Conklin. I'm also the Director of Artist Relations and Programming at the Grammy Museum Experience. And today I'm happy to be joined by two of the most accomplished instrumentalists in American music, Leo Kottke and Mike Gordon. They've recently released their third album together. It's called Noon, and we'll be discussing some of those songs today. Leo and Mike, welcome to Behind the Songs.
Good
Thanks
to
for
be
having
here.
us. Yeah.
Well, first, I was going to ask you, just in general, how is it? How have you been keeping busy during this whole? In the middle of 2020, as crazy it is, I'm sure you'd normally be on the road. Other than
Mike
putting
is
out music,
always
what are you doing?
Mike is always busier than me, so let's have Mike launch into that one.
But Leo uses his time much more efficiently than me, so he gets more done, despite not being busy. That's what's not fair. But yeah, I've been incredibly busy. I'm working on my own next album very slowly, and I love it, getting to just take my time, but every day working with my engineer and the producer of Noon, Jared. So that's my main thing. I've been designing a studio, which just found out it can't happen because it's too expensive, but hopefully someday. So things like that. And then I'm singing with my daughter and, doing some fun look backs at Noon like this, since we're still celebrating its release. And that's kind of the era. Yeah. It's a nice era.
For me, it's this is the first time in over 50 years that I've been off the road for longer than 2 months. And I love every bit of it. I miss the playing, but I don't miss the travel. So I'm making use of sitting still and, discovering the virtues of a very old habit I have of being a recluse. I'm not nearly as bothered by that anymore because it's sort of imposed as well. So I'm having actually a very good time. Got a new guitar built by a friend of mine up north. Mike's got one of these guitars, and this is working well for me.
Now, were you planning the album? Was it already kind of in motion to be out, and then were you planning a tour, or was it kind of like what period of time were you guys working on this? Pre-pandemic, during? How did that flesh out for you?
This started what would it be, Mike, about two years, maybe 3 years ago. We first
really
showed
2015, 5 years ago, 2015. Yeah. That's when we first started listening to tunes and playing. You played me some tunes.
We thought at the time, we're talking about it, your other studio outside Burlington, right?
Yeah.
We thought at the time that the bottom was shifty, and we didn't trust anything we'd recorded. As it turned out, once we recorded the rest of it, it worked fine. And that was really nice. It was like getting something for nothing.
It's a vibey studio, but it was never built for acoustics. And Leo had done some recording elsewhere, but most we redid. And then as recently as last year, we finished it up in New Orleans, maybe a little more in Vermont after that. But it's been a long time, even before 2015, just talking about it. Should we have a drummer? Should we not have a drummer? Should we have a producer? Should we not have a producer? How might we record? So then by the time the pandemic hit, we pretty much had an album. It was mixed before the pandemic started, before the lockdown, and mastered just before the lockdown. And we did not have a tour planned yet. We were talking about ways of touring, so we were going to do it. And ideally, we would still do it sometime, because I think there were some interesting logistical and technical questions about us being able to make it work on stage. And I think we kind of figured them out, how we would do it. So, but we're still playing by piecing things together remotely, and it's been much better than we thought, than either one of us thought. It's been an interesting.
Very true. I really like some of the stuff that we've done remotely, and it is surprising how well it can work. It's nice to have. A friend of mine told me a story about her grandmother that she obviously became very familiar with growing up, who had a picture in her living room with a cracked glass over it. And when she was an adult, your grandmother has some in the birth on these remotes that are great. I mean, what you can't call them error. It's just like breathing, and I really like that about these things. The time too. The time is good, and Fishman, who had to come in, you know, it's a really tough place for a drummer, you know, to come on to a track in some cases that. I mean, it was hard to say where these tracks started, actually. Isn't that right, Mike? I mean, who's who?
Yeah, it is tricky because
really weird.
On my songs, Leo would have started with an accompaniment that then the main body of the song was built for the videos. But the great thing is, I'm just kind of realizing now, is that some of the album was made that way too. At least a lot of what I did before Leo made some songs, we both made song suggestions. And so we had some song ideas, but what I wanted to do is spend a lot of time alone and with Jared composing bass lines and not just noodling randomly, which that sounds bad, noodling randomly, but when you get someone like Leo, it's going to sound good. And it sometimes does with me too, but with so much going on in the music and, you know, beats being dropped and interesting chord changes and all the unexpected, I really want, and some of the more intense instrumentals. So I wanted to compose bass lines and really take my time. So now flash forward 4 or 5 years later, and we're promoting the album the same way that I was composing the bass lines, which is taking what Leo did and being able to sit there. Now we have video cameras and we have Jared, but being able to work on it and study it and piece it in and edit it. And in some ways, the videos are coming out, at least in a certain way, better than, or more, a different kind of interesting than they would have if we had just gotten in a room and recorded them. Because there's that, slow down the process and look at it.
There's a sonority to these things as well. I'm working on one mic and a room mic, and you got more of the rosin on the Mike's sick of me using that word, I'm sure, but more of the rosin on my transient on the guitar. Also, that's the new guitar that I'm working with. So there is something in this that isn't in the record itself, and they're a good combination. It's it really highlights what the process is and the differences that, you know, that it affords. Very interesting. And probably at a level that most people would be bored shitless even thinking about, but it's pretty captivating in the middle of it.
I gotta say, I haven't listened to the record in a little bit, and I dropped the needle when Jared and I had some good speakers, and I really liked how, to me, for a moment, I thought, oh, this is just some classic Leo thing. And then I realized, oh, it's our album, which means that I feel like we did a better job maybe of not robbing you of your classic Leo soul in creating an album, leaving something intact that's supposed to be there. I don't know.
Yeah, it is true that I think we have more fun and more anxiety both on this record than the first two.
And the anxiety, like, who would want to throw away anxiety? That's a good part of the equation.
Exactly.
Well, the song Flat Top, which opens, and I know you're going to play for us, see if I can jog your memory as to kind of how that evolved, when maybe during this process it evolved, and how you both ended up collaborating, whether you were together or in different rooms, and et cetera.
It started in outside Burlington, and as far as I can recall, and it'd be a good beginner because it's short and it just goes straight ahead, but it isn't a machine. You know, it's got some section to it, some part to it, which left room. And there's a section whenever we do it where we, in effect, just with rhythm take a cadenza and make shit up. And that is a lot of fun, and that's where I really get to hear Mike. Mike doesn't play like he comes up from the ground like you need, playing with other people, but it's a different planet. And
Neptune.
It's really startling what he comes up with, and Flat Top. There's a whole section that allows that to the maximum. So that's what I remember of it.
Leo had brought a bunch of songs that he played for me, and I even made cell phone recordings. Sometimes my composing was on Pro Tools, but with using a cell phone recording. So a song like that, it's like a love at first sight thing for me, because it's so simple, and it isn't. It's 1-4-5. It's short. It doesn't have any words, and it sounds inevitable. But as soon as you get under the hood, I love what I don't understand. And first of all, when I started putting bass lines over that part he's talking about, and then more in the second half where it opens up, and we did re-record it. It's not the cell phone plus composing, but the composing really informed where I was going with it, because I love finding these places where I don't know where the beat is, and I don't know where the chord is, and I don't know how my melody ended up matching what Leo was doing. I know we tried a lot of things when Jared was helping me compose, like harmonizing his lines, playing in unison with his lines, ignoring his lines entirely and playing a bass note. But I love when I'm just thrown off, and if my mind, and one can listen to Leo and have a great experience of having the surprises that happen when you think you know where the next chord is going to fall, and he'll surprise you. So he can do that alone. So I was so happy to be part of that equation where I'm doing it too, throwing my own mind off, listening to it back. And then flash forward again several years to this year, where we were making a video of it, and I thought, I'm going to learn the time signature of this song. And I counted it out, and the first time I tried it, I got it wrong. And I couldn't believe when I finally counted it out that I realized that the first part is in 9, and which Leo probably doesn't even know, but except in his hands. Right. And I texted him or something, and I said, OMG, I can't believe that, first of all, it starts out in 9, and second of all, it ends up in 4/4. It changes, ups the odd. And the amazing thing is that I didn't know that while making the album, ever. I just played. But I think so in other words, Leo helped me to get into this land that I love, which is the land of being disoriented in such a simple context. So for me, that's just a no-brainer. And then when the mastering was done, I just couldn't believe it. It's just 2 instruments, but I've never heard 2 instruments just climb out of my car speakers like that. Oh my God, even to the point where all the other songs on the album can't quite be mastered as well as that one. And it was so good that we actually had to turn it down so that by a few decibels so the other songs could compete with it and wouldn't sound softer. Anyway, it was just super fun to just watch it unfold. These things just kind of unfold by themselves. And I love this. I don't want to go on a tangent. You've got 2 people here who are famous for tangents that could bury us in the ground, but so good luck getting out of this one. We pretend that we want it to be half an hour. I was just going to say, I love this recent Chris Thiele is doing these master classes, and he was analyzing Bach and Debussy and with his and Radiohead with his mandolin. Anyway, he said, I don't know whose quote this was originally, composition is improvisation and improvisation is composition. And Bach was an incredible improviser, and everyone knew that. And that's kind of wild to think about, but it makes a lot of sense. Leo, I don't know how you wrote, when I've heard you talk about putting a song like that together, but I imagine a lot of what you do coming from improvisation and then getting dialed in very carefully, like someone who would do on pen and paper, but over time.
Yeah, you heard me. It's the first thing I do in the morning, and I just fool around and hope to stumble over something. And when that happens, you like it, so you play it a lot, and you play it so much that all of a sudden something else will pop up, and that's it's the hook. This guitar got me when I was a trombone player, and it hasn't let go. I've spent a lot of time solo and on stage, and so this is I can't get this any other way. There are laughs in this whole record, and all three of them, that I'm not going to get any other way. Music is good for you. Must say.
I love the inspiration of people like Leo, and especially Leo, who just do it by playing. Because I've got this firstborn personality, which Leo knows about, but I make the lists and the goals and like, okay, today I'm going to practice this Jocko lick, and then for 20 minutes, and then I'm on to my songwriting thing. But it's very regimented and it's charted out. And I love when people can do all that by playing. Anyway.
Speaking of, though, things that are random, I Am Random, which is the next track.
Me too.
No, I thought it was, first of all, it's very interesting that there seems to be so many of these pieces, kind of these spoken things and things that you hear. I'm curious how that came about. Was there conversations in the studio that, and you said, no, we should leave that in there. Tell us a little bit about how that comes to be.
Well, I know in the song How Many People Are You, Leo's doing two different poems in the background and the foreground as a montage. But in this song, one random thing we have is, there's a few probably. One of them is John Fishman just babbling. And so now I will say that guy has got the gift of gab. I've heard about, I haven't yet heard, I hate to say, he's got a radio show on the Phish Sirius XM called The Errant Path. And it's supposed to be really good. Everyone that hears that likes it. And I can believe it because, I've been on plane rides with him, and don't get him started because he's read the preface of every history book about the Ottoman Empire or Abraham Lincoln and if you get him started, it's going to be the whole plane ride. And we used to have a thing with the Phish guys. It was really mean. It wasn't the only mean thing we did to him. We did several mean things, but this is just one. Which is if he went on too long on some tangent, some story, and 45 minutes has gone by, we would all start whistling. So it just fell together like that, and I Am Random. It wasn't by device. But so for the middle part, I said, we love it when you just talk. We just turned on a microphone while he was setting up his drums. And then it was probably like, oh, that fit the song. Can you just talk for a while? Like, just talk. And so we recorded it, not knowing where in the track it would fall. And then we erased most of it. See, that's the great thing about editing. You could turn the whole thing off, except 3 little comments. There was one comment over that middle bridge or in between the lines that we all really liked. It was something like, and I was standing there and he was standing there and holding a Quran and next to a cross and also next to the Buddha. What was it? Something like that. And everyone loved the line, and everyone liked it because it was kind of edgy. Like, we knew that people wouldn't like the sound of it, and that's why we wanted it in there. But we took it out because it was kind of distracting for the song itself. But so what I wanted to leave was just I had some files, and then turned that off. And so he caught the random vibe. So usually in the Phish world, I'm the random person that, every world that I'm in, I'm so what. An example of that might be, I don't say much at a band meeting, and they go on for a long time, and those guys are brilliant and worldly. So we're talking about current affairs and a lot of that going on. And I won't say anything. And then after 40 minutes, I'll say, I don't know. But then the Xerox machine fell in the swimming pool, and everyone will laugh. And I'm kind of known as the non sequitur person. And it's not that have any other way to be. It's just the only way I know to be. I wish I could be in the conversation more. But just to say I'll just, since we're talking about where songs come from a little bit, I'll just say that there was a jam that my band had, my quintet, and Scott Morawski started going, wham, 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 in the guitar. And he just made us a very high energy rock jam on one chord. Wah, 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 wah. And Scott and I were in a 2-level treehouse, and somehow that turned into I Am Random. And before we knew it, we were eating lunch down at the grill and taking lines off of this little pamphlet telling you where to go in Sunapee, New Hampshire. And, you know, every line has to resonate. But they're coming in as randomly as the rest of the song. The song is writing itself. And then so with Leo, it just kind of like these just things sometimes fall into place. We had a few other songs from both of us that didn't fall into place for the album in the same way. But when we started playing it together, it grew a chord progression. It didn't have, my band always played it on one chord, so we gave it the changes, and it just kind of morphs itself. These songs morph themselves into the situations, and they try to fight for themselves, and we try to say, no, you can't be here, and then they try to stay on the album.
Talk about the decision to have Fishman come in and play drums. Was that you that actually was promoting that? I thought I had seen that somewhere, that it was your urging. How did it come about that he was on the album?
Oh, I always bring up Fishman, and you know, that everything waits. You know, Mike said something about this. You just follow your nose, and finally a hole opened up, and it had Fishman in it. That Fishman was the perfect fit, and I was just really happy to see that. Because I want to see Fishman and Mike together. You know, I've only seen the band Phish once in live, and the, you know, for me the power trio is you know, an old Peckerwood on a flat top, and Fishman and Mike. It was a ball. I wish we could have done that in the same room, and I'm looking forward to that someday.
It's the power trio. It's basically, it's the Who. It's all the other power. It's Led Zeppelin. And yeah, Phish. Interesting thing about drums in general. It's really on the one hand, good for me and Leo, I think, because we both can be flighty with our rhythms and melodies, and the drums can anchor the situation. But Phish is way out there as well. I mean, one thing is that you don't want to over anchor the situation. And if the drummer starts hitting really hard and starts being really even, then it's like, okay, it's not as surprising anymore. Just like the bass can.
I can iron it.
Yeah,
you can really iron it out and dumb it down. I saw Fishman playing with Pork Tornado here in Minneapolis, and I'd met Fishman a long time ago at some bar in New York, I heard him on record in Phish, but with Pork Tornado, I got to see it happen. It's a very loud band in 7th Avenue here in Minneapolis, in a small space, and you could hear everything John did, every little thing, and he was dropping the sticks on the drums. He wasn't muscling his way through, and it was really musical. And we played a while with a Bahamian drummer named Neil Simonet, who had he had a different country in his playing. And Fishman has this polyrhythm of stuff with, you know, limbs that are independent from each other, and they're audible. He knows where to put them so that they do hold up. They give you a reference for the rhythm without, as you say, you know, but only where there's room for it. So it can't iron out or dumb down the track.
He's got huge ears. Phish guys, best thing to do is listen. I mean, to each other, and there are some worse things, but that's the best. But 3 things about Phish. first of all, I don't remember all three. He's a very gentle soul in one sense. I mean, he's determined, but so his drum hits and his musical conversation has a gentleness to it, where it's going to listen to and ebb and flow with what's around it. The flow is incredible. It's like a wave. It's so natural. But he also practices 8 hours a day. Sometimes he has goals. Sometimes it's just playing. So there's just a lot of dexterity, like Leo was saying. The limbs have been separated. Polyrhythms are happening. When we had already recorded our tracks in this case too, even though it was before the pandemic. And he came in and he said, well, I have this thing where I was mixing this calypso groove with this funk groove, and I'm going to do the calypso groove with my left hand and foot and the funk groove with my right hand and foot. I'm, just sort of paraphrasing, but, and put it together. And the first thought was, this is wild. I'm so glad that this is someone not just going for the billionth time. But then it had to be tempered, because if it doesn't have enough of that anchory thing, then Leo and it accentuates the looseness in our playing, and it doesn't hold us together. It pushes us further apart. So it's a fine line. We had to encourage him to simplify a little bit and then edit him a bit. But then in the end, when it all gels, it's just the perfect combination. I forgot what there's an important third thing which will come back to me.
I remember when we were in, I think it was, we were flying out of Telluride in a snowstorm, and the airport was jammed. Was that Telluride, Mike? Somebody gave us seats so we could get out. And we were touring then with Neil Simonet. And Simonet and Jean-Luc Ponty are sitting in this, back-to-back, belly-to-belly lobby. And Ponty played some African rhythm, and one of the two guys had a little pair of drums, and they played, and it was really fascinating about it for me, and it was really catchy. Really, you could not get away from it. It's a whole other kingdom. What is it? Kingdom, family, phylum, species of musicianship, and it's one that's, I've spent all my time with chords once I got away from the trombone, and to be away from notes and but that's the other thing with Fishman. I remember babbling at him about this, is his tone. He's a real tone player as well. There's a sugar in what he's doing on this record that pops up now and then, and Shakatukawa. There's this, but a figure with this texture and this sound. It's really shocking to find out that a drum is music.
We did, lo and behold, against both of our theories.
Yeah.
But the third thing, I remember the third thing, which is what Leo said. Me and him together, whether we like it or not, and we do like it, is we played 2,000 shows together, and another whole huge bunch of 37 years of practicing together. And so it was really interesting in putting the videos together, where since Leo was playing alone, he would be a little more free with his tempo, speeding up and slowing down. And then, as he said, one microphone for singing and for playing. Well, it's a beautiful thing though. And so on the same mic, so if Leo was singing a little bit louder, the guitar would get a little softer. And so we matched that for the videos. And the amazing thing is, and first with bass and then with drums, the amazing thing is with all this craziness of rhythm, three people attracting craziness, that there were times when we looked at it on sonically and visually, and Phish and I are right together. And Leo might have been ahead or behind, and then we would just either catch us up or pull him back a little, and it was all good. But the telepathy that happens from 2,000 gigs, Leo brought his bass player too, his thumb, to the equation. And I brought my bass player. I brought my drummer. Yeah, Phish brought his bass player, me, and Leo brought his bass player. And the four of us did a great job. But I love the challenge of it, to decode all the possibilities when people can let go of conventions pretty easily. And it took, with Phish, as I call him, it took him... It took 10 years. Yeah, we should have a ticker tape at the bottom. He was unwilling to put the snare on 2 and 4 for the first 10 years of Phish, maybe 5-10 years. It had to be, he could play, and as a band, we could play on 13, we could play an 11, but we couldn't play a blues shuffle in 4. And so we started trying to do that every sound check, realizing how amazingly bad we were at the simplest things. So you take half of that band and put it with Leo Kottke, it's win-win. The people that are attracted to the strange rhythms.
A little bit more of it on the traditional side, a song sung from the cradle to the grave. So, Leo, when you're singing that song, which, by the way, there's the line, sometimes I wish this crazy race was over, the thought of living scares me half to death, is a great, great line. It kind of like one of the ones I had to stop and rewind a little bit and hear it again. That song, so you're doing that, just you and the microphone and the guitar. It's one, you're not overdubbing the vocal and stuff too, right. I assume. What can you tell us about where that came from and what you remember about writing about it?
Oh yeah, I do. My daughter had just been born. I wrote it a long time ago, and I had her in mind when I wrote it. And you say write it, but it's the same thing. You pick up the guitar, and whatever you are at that moment is going to come out. And it was her. It fell into place, the section, the melody. And the lyric turned out to be so sweet that it just, the only person who could handle that would be her dad. So I asked Ron Nagel if he'd write the lyric. And he said, well, what do you want here? And I said, I wrote it for my daughter. She's brand new. And it's too sweet. It's just, I need something, And he came up with From the Cradle to the Grave. He de-sweetened it a lot, and I agree with you. It's really a great lyric, and it's a lot of fun to play because I get to poke a little bit where a lot of times I don't get to poke. And what I mean by poke is just that little figure, which is about as common as you can get. It's really been milked to death in R&B. And actually a little toward the center from R&B, and that's how it started. I used to play it a lot on the 12 string, then the pitch changed, and my voice changed, and everything fell apart, and I didn't touch it for a long time. I think Mike brought it up. Maybe it came up when we were trying to decide, what sucked that we had and what worked that we had.
Yeah, I think you suggested it, but I fell in love with the idea, and we took the album version, which is just Leo, and overdubbed and composed a bass line to the album version. So we couldn't use that because it's from early 70s, and but it was, by the time we got to the studio in New Orleans, Leo showed me that it's a different key, a different guitar, and different vocal range, and even the melody changed. Everything changed, and it took some adjusting. But in the end, I think it better matched what we were doing because it has a little more of the melancholy. But not to get technical again, but when you said back to something more traditional, rhythmically, the part where he's singing and every day is the same, I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't count it. And honestly, I think it's some kind of 11. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, diddle, 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 down, diddle, down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, no. And when I didn't realize that again until we were right in the studio about to hit record, and I had to ask myself, can I play an 11? I mean, in the right context, but not in that song. I'm middle of playing in 4. How am I going to switch to 11? How am I going to drop that beat? And everyone just said, just feel it. No, 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 no. and I would do a little too fast and a little too slow. So in terms of traditional, again, I love that Leo's stuff doesn't fall into the trappings. It might have a traditional sweet message and some chords, but it avoids the predictable.
And you said playing over. Isn't that how you two started working together, Mike? Were you playing over some things that Leo had done previously?
Well, there was. I had a little epiphany hearing Leo not just play but talk on the radio. I had met him before, but it just clicked. Like I could talk to this guy. So I thought, okay, while I'm talking, he's going to come to town. I might as well make him a little care package, and it had 4 things in it, and one of them was me, and it was actually a technique that I didn't use until this album. Since then, I mean, I said that wrong. So I composed a bass line over Driving the Year Nail, which was a recording with Jess Leo. And I took a while. I took a month or two, just sort of like finding that I had put too many notes in here, not enough notes in there, but I did not at all want it to be a standard bass line. But any bass line needs to justify its being there by having some grounding, by defining some of the chords. And so it had to have little of that, but I wanted it to be like a duet. And I gave it to him, and then a book that I wrote, and magazine I was on the cover of, my first bass player magazine, and the recent Phish album, which was Story of the Ghost at the time, that album that I loved. And he mentioned one word from my book on stage, and I didn't hear from him for 3 months, 4 months. And then I've told this story, but then I got a call, and I said, "Oh, I finally listened to the tape," and he said, "Well, this is the way I remember it. That people have been doing this for years, where they put themselves over my material, and I always think it's pretty cheesy." And so I was getting ready for apologizing for doing something cheesy, and he said, "But there's something kind of different about this one, so let's get together and jam." And that added to the word that I used in the book, which he liked, gave me the stamp of approval.
The word is eleemosynary. And the only other place I saw that word, and it's when I learned what the word meant, it was in The French Lieutenant's Woman, a John Fowles novel. It's to be an eleemosynary is to be someone who's given to supporting charitable causes. Yeah. It's, if you run into somebody else who's familiar with that word, you got to find out what that's about.
Right.
How do you guys like that I've balanced my sunset by shadowing my neck and lighting my face? If I say here, then I have a different problem. I'm like my body is filling up with some. Anyway, I'll try to keep it clean.
Keep your head up.
Be unshaven.
The last one I wanted to ask you guys about was how many people are you?
Yeah.
And you'd mentioned it earlier, right? There's that outro with the layered voiceover, which is very interesting. Yeah. How did that all come about in that song?
It was.
I remember opening my mouth just to hear it go on. I tried to memorize Sunday Morning by Wallace Stevens. I got about 5 stanzas in. I wanted to see if I could do it, and every now and then I just start talking. You have some dead time, some space waiting for what used to be tape roll or something like that. Or I don't know what the digital equivalent is. And it went on tape, and then it became I think Mike and Jared they really put a lot of that track together.
But we were in New Orleans, though, having fun and walking around the studio.
Oh, that's right.
Even though we had recorded we played together on that and a few of the tracks in Vermont simultaneously against all odds. But we worked on it. I was doing some vocal overdubs, and the song is called "How Many People Are You?" I'm 3, Leo's 4, so that's the answer. But Leo had got to be a few different people, because not only the Wallace Stevens, but he put in his own poem in the same song, and it used to be longer. An earlier version had, I don't know, a minute and a half of Leo doing poetry in the beginning, and then throughout the entire song. And the song was longer too, because there was a minute long of jamming before the first verse. That all wasn't good. Actually, the poetry was pretty good, but the way that it fit the song, it was all too long, and it just didn't earn its presence, the extra jamming. And so we cut it shorter and shorter and shorter, and it just got better. But yeah, again, I like things that I don't understand. And always, maybe we've all had that experience of you're thinking about someone and they seem to be everywhere, but there's different ways to take that phrase, how many people are you? And it could be, you know, you say this one day and you're saying this another day, and each of the verses are kind of different like that. But what an opportunity to have someone blabbing in the background. So the microphones are going up and the blabbing is, the poetry is starting, and it's just, we have fun. We're in the studio. Like, there's nothing else we want to do than hear Leo walking around and saying, an English egg is a runny egg, and things like that. You know, it's fun. It's one of the fun things. So, and then Jared and I, all we did when we got back to Vermont was the editing. Yeah.
And do you guys, I mean, do you have, it's been a while, Leo, this is, I guess, 15 years, is that right? Between albums? Sure. I'm not that you've obviously been very active in playing, but
I don't know.
Yeah, 15 years between releases.
That's what it looked like, at least. And is there another project in thought of right now, or is it just now you let this one sit and do its thing for a while, and you know, obviously you have a lot of things going on now with the videos and such, but are there thoughts of more records in the future?
I have, when every time a record finishes, I don't know if it's this way for everybody. I know it worked this way with Mike. You want to do something right away, because you've wrapped this, you got it in shape, and it's right. You know, you reach a point in every record where it's exhausting, and then you keep going, and then it picks up again. It has its own curve, and it's almost always the same. At the end, you want to do more. And Mike and I mean, almost immediately started throwing ideas.
Yeah.
And especially Mike. There's a whole history to that we've talked about for years.
I mean, for me, it's that I fall in love with an album, and when it's out and it's done, it has a form, and it's a result of so many things, the processes that went into making it, and then how it's edited and formed, but it's just one thing. And for me, that's the point when I realize some other possibility, because that thing is now defined, or it's now set. It beckons the thought of, oh, but what if this? And the thought that I had was, I have said this before, and I don't know if it could work or how it would work, but if we were to do all the writing of an album together, maybe not all the lyric writing, but piecing together the music all together, and then maybe came up with lyrics individually or whatever that was about, but crafted something like a blank canvas where no one's bringing material. That would be wild. That's just a fantasy and it doesn't have to happen. We both have our other various careers and sitting arounds that we love to do. But if it did, it would be pretty cool. Oh, I'm really fighting the sunset now. I'm gonna put the line under my eyes. Is that natural? Okay.
Very natural
enough.
Okay. That's great.
Okay.
Well, that's great. I know you guys are going to play a little bit for us, so everybody obviously stay tuned for that, because that'll be coming up. But gentlemen, thank you both so much for taking some time to be with us today and give us your insights behind these songs. It's a great album. I got a chance to really listen to it quite a bit over the last few days, and I recommend everybody go check out Noon, of course. And thank you again for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Behind the Songs. We will see you next time. And as always, we encourage you to make music and make a difference. And we'll see you next time.
to this show. I wasn't even on the list, but in my mind there's a long red carpet. Come this way, sir, be our guest. I am random. I said a couple things and you can't understand them. I am random. People cutting deals and I'm never gonna land them. I am random. I can't always get a handle. I am random. From the peak of summer to the powder days, the dirt serpent always rides on top. I had big ideas and then I canned them. Pump it up, you don't lose till you drop. I am random. I said a couple things and you can't understand them. I am random. People cutting deals and I'm never gonna land them. I am random. I can't always get a handle. I am random. I'm taking in the world with all my senses. I didn't even need to expand them. Saying all the things to complete all your thoughts. We can think them better if we think it in tandem. I can't wait to get out of this dive. If I make it out with you, then I'll make it out alive. I've got an idea about a sweet place to go. I'll get the bubble wrap, you grab the snow.